You didn't reply to their text for 3 hours, not because you were busy, not because you didn't care, but because you read it 17 times, drafted 4 different responses, deleted all of them, and then sat there wondering if any answer you gave would somehow say the wrong thing. That's not indifference. That's a mind that never stops. And here's what nobody tells you about people like that. People like you, maybe. Loving them is one of the most exhausting, confusing, and quietly beautiful things a person can do. Welcome to Thought Paradox. Today we're going to talk about something that almost nobody says out loud. Why overthinkers are genuinely, objectively, painfully hard to love. And more importantly, why so many people can't stop trying anyway. Let's start by clearing something up. When people hear the word overthinker, they usually picture someone who just worries a lot. Someone who can't decide what to order at a restaurant. Someone who stresses about meetings. That's not what we're talking about. Real overthinkers, the kind this video is about, don't just think more than average. They experience the world in a fundamentally different register. For them, a single moment contains multitudes. A look from across the room becomes a full psychological analysis. A pause in conversation gets dissected for tone. A text left on read triggers a cascade of possible meanings, each one feeding into the next like a chain reaction with no off switch. Psychologists often link this to something called rumination, a pattern where the brain loops back on thoughts, emotions, and events instead of processing and releasing them. But rumination doesn't fully capture it either, because rumination sounds like a disorder, like something broken. And overthinkers aren't broken. They're often some of the most perceptive, empathetic, creative people you will ever meet. Their minds are calibrated for depth, for nuance, for seeing angles that other people miss entirely. The problem isn't the thinking. The problem is that the thinking doesn't stop. Not when they go to bed. Not when they're supposed to be relaxing. Not when they're with the people they love most. And that relentlessness is what makes them so difficult to be close to. Not because they're cold, not because they don't care, but because caring for them is a full-time cognitive operation. Let's get specific, because this is where most videos stop at the surface. We're going deeper. 1. They make you feel like everything you say is being evaluated. When you talk to an overthinker, there's something almost imperceptible that happens. You say something offhand, a joke, a passing comment, something you'll forget in 10 minutes. But they won't forget it. They'll turn it over. Wonder what you meant. Consider whether there was something underneath it. File it away next to 3 other things you said 2 weeks ago that felt similar. And the thing is, they're not doing this to be suspicious of you. They're doing it because their brain makes connections. It draws patterns. It builds maps. But from the outside, it can feel like being watched, like being studied, like every word is a test you didn't know you were taking. And that creates distance, even when the overthinker desperately wants closeness. 2. They can't accept reassurance, at least not easily. Here's one of the cruelest loops of loving an overthinker. They need reassurance, deeply, often, sometimes constantly. But when you give it to them, it doesn't always land. You say, "I'm not mad at you." They hear, "What did I do to make you think I was mad?" Was it something specific? Why did they feel the need to say that unprompted? Does that mean they were a little bit mad? You say, "I love you." They think, do they mean it the same way they meant it last week? Or has something shifted? This isn't manipulation. It's not intentional. It's a brain that has learned, often from early experiences, that the surface of things can't always be trusted. That safety requires vigilance. Reassurance helps. But it has to work its way through layers to reach them. And sometimes, by the time it does, they've already started a new spiral. 3. They delay everything. And it looks like they don't care. Decision paralysis is real. When an overthinker faces a decision, even a small one, they don't just weigh pros and cons. They simulate outcomes. They anticipate regret. They imagine future versions of themselves looking back at this moment. So making plans feels hard. Committing feels terrifying. Even choosing a place for dinner can spiral into a quiet internal crisis. To a partner, a friend, a family member, this looks like indifference. They never want to plan anything. They take forever to respond. They're never fully present. But the truth is almost the opposite of indifference. The overthinker is often so invested in getting things right, and not disappointing you, and not making the wrong call, and not ruining the moment, that they freeze under the weight of their own caring. 4. They read into silence, and silence destroys them. If you go quiet around an overthinker, understand, to them, silence is not neutral. Silence is data, and their brain is going to interpret that data whether they want it to or not. Your silence becomes, are you angry? Bored? Pulling away? Regretting something? Reconsidering everything? This is why overthinkers often overcommunicate, because they'd rather say too much than sit inside the unbearable ambiguity of not knowing where they stand with you. And it's why they sometimes come across as needy or intense or exhausting, because for them, the space between words is not peaceful. It is a landscape they have to navigate alone, with no map. 5. They apologize. Even when they've done nothing wrong. I'm sorry, I'm being weird. I'm sorry, I know I'm a lot. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that. Overthinkers apologize compulsively, not because they're doormats, not because they're weak, but because their internal critic is running constantly. It's always reviewing, always finding something to flag. Did I talk too much? Was I too intense? Did I make it weird? Should I have stayed quiet? And the apologies after a while begin to wear on the people around them. Because when someone apologizes for existing often enough, the people who love them don't know what to do with that. They don't know whether to argue back, to ignore it, to comfort them. And slowly, not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion, some people start to pull away. 6. They love too loudly, inside, and too quietly, outside. Here's the paradox that defines overthinkers in relationships. Inside, they feel everything enormously. They think about the people they love constantly. They replay your conversations. They notice the way your voice changes when you're happy versus when you're tired. They remember things you said months ago. Your favorite song when you were 7, the name of your childhood dog, the exact way you take your coffee. But none of that usually comes out directly, because expressing it feels risky, vulnerable, like handing someone a window into a room they might not want to enter. So they hold it, all of it. And from the outside, they can seem closed off, distant, emotionally unavailable. People leave them and say, "You never really let me in." And the overthinker is left thinking, "But I let you in further than anyone. You just couldn't see the door." 7. They turn love into a problem to solve. This is perhaps the most quietly devastating one. Overthinkers often approach love the way they approach everything else, analytically. They're trying to understand it, predict it, protect themselves within it. What does this relationship mean? Where is it going? Are we on the same page? What does it mean that they did that? What does it say about us that we fought about this? And love, real, messy, irrational love, doesn't respond well to analysis. It doesn't have clean answers. It can't be mapped. It resists the frameworks the overthinker needs to feel safe. So there's a constant friction between wanting to surrender to the feeling and needing to understand it first. And that friction wears on partners who just want to feel the love without running it through a philosophical filter every time. Now here's the question nobody really asks. Why are they like this? Not rhetorically. Actually. Because overthinkers aren't born fully formed with this much noise in their heads. Something made them this way. And understanding that changes everything. For many overthinkers, the pattern starts in childhood. Maybe they grew up in an environment that was unpredictable, a parent whose moods shifted without warning, a home where reading the room wasn't a social skill. It was a survival strategy. When you spend years learning to anticipate what's coming next, your nervous system starts treating the present moment as something to prepare for rather than something to be in. The hypervigilance that kept you safe then becomes the anxiety that keeps you trapped now. For others, it started with a specific wound, a betrayal, a loss, a moment where someone they trusted completely turned out to be someone different than they thought. And the brain, trying to protect them, built walls. Not walls that keep people out exactly, but walls lined with sensors, monitors, alert systems. I will never be caught off guard again. That's not pathology. That's adaptation. It's just that the adaptation has a cost. And for some, it's simply how their brain is wired. Higher sensitivity, greater emotional bandwidth, a nervous system that processes deeply rather than broadly. Research in the field of sensory processing sensitivity, associated with what psychologist Elaine Aron called the highly sensitive person, suggests that roughly 15 to 20% of the population simply experience the world with more intensity, more input, more processing, more output, if only internally. These aren't broken people. These are people with a different operating system, one that has extraordinary capabilities and extraordinary costs. Let me try to put you inside it for a moment. You're in bed. It's 2 a.m. The person you love is asleep next to you. Everything is fine, objectively, factually. Nothing is wrong, but your brain is running a query it cannot stop. Did they seem off today? Was something wrong? Did you say something? Was the dinner weird? They didn't finish their food. Is that a sign? Of what? Are you overthinking this? You're definitely overthinking this. But what if you're not? What if this is the beginning of something ending? What if you don't want to be doing this? You want to sleep. You want peace. You want to be the kind of person who rests. But rest isn't something your mind knows how to do on command. And the worst part? You know that this is exhausting for the people who love you. And that knowledge becomes its own spiral. I'm too much. I'm always too much. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just... That's the sound of an overthinker at 2 a.m. Not dramatic, not performing, not seeking attention. Just tired. So unbearably, quietly tired. Here's the thing nobody talks about in these conversations. Because we spend so much time discussing what makes overthinkers difficult, that we forget to ask, what makes them magnetic? And the answer is almost always the same thing, the very thing that makes them hard. Overthinkers notice you, not in the surface way most people do. They notice the you underneath the you, the micro-expression when you're trying to seem fine, the subject you change when something makes you uncomfortable, the way you laugh differently depending on how safe you feel. They remember what you said in passing, months ago, and bring it back in a moment you needed to feel seen. They think about you when you're not there, not in a possessive way, in a dedicated way. You exist in their mind as a full, complex, three-dimensional person. not a character in their story, a whole world. Overthinkers love with a specificity that few people ever experience. When an overthinker loves you, they love the specific you, not a generic version, not an idealized projection. The real you, the complicated you, the contradictory you, because they've studied you, not to judge, but because you fascinated them, you mattered to them, you were worth the time. And overthinkers, when they trust you, really trust you, will go places with you that most people can't reach. Conversations at 3 a.m. that go somewhere real. Questions that make you look at yourself differently. A presence that is completely, totally, fully with you. Because when an overthinker decides to be present, they are present with everything they have. No part of them is somewhere else. They chose you, and they choose you again. Every day. On purpose. After thinking about it, that's not a small thing. This isn't a video that ends by saying overthinkers are perfect and everyone else just needs to be more patient. That would be dishonest, because overthinkers have work to do too. What they need from others: consistency. Not perfection, just consistency. Because inconsistency feeds the spiral. When someone's words and actions line up again and again, the nervous system begins to learn. This is safe. This person stays. Patience during the silence. Not every quiet moment needs to be filled. Sometimes the overthinker just needs you to stay in the room while they find their way back. Directness. Say what you mean. The overthinker will always fill ambiguity with their worst fears. Take that power away. Just say the thing. What they owe the people who love them. They owe them honesty about what's happening inside. You can't expect someone to meet you where you are if you won't tell them where that is. They owe them effort toward self-regulation, therapy, journaling, mindfulness. Not to fix themselves, but to build tools so the spiral has somewhere to go besides the people they love. And they owe them grace. The grace to not punish someone for things they haven't done yet. To resist the urge to treat the present relationship like a reenactment of past wounds. Because here's the truth. The overthinker's mind is not the enemy, but it can become one if it's never questioned, never witnessed, never given space to breathe. If you are an overthinker, I want you to hear this. The way your mind works is not a flaw to be apologized for. It is a way of being in the world that carries weight, real weight, but also real beauty. You notice things others miss. You love in ways that most people never experience. You think deeply in a world that rewards thinking shallowly. That's worth something. But you also deserve peace. And peace, for you, might look different than it does for everyone else. It might look like finding someone who doesn't flinch at your depth. It might look like learning, slowly, to trust your own nervous system a little more. It might look like small moments, ordinary Tuesday moments, where the thoughts go quiet and you're just there, present, not preparing, not analyzing, not apologizing, just there. And if you love an overthinker, thank you for staying. Thank you for the nights you didn't understand the silence but sat in it anyway. For the moments you said the simple thing, not the clever thing, because they needed simple. For the patience that nobody gave you instructions for. You didn't sign up for easy. But I hope you found it's worth it. Because when an overthinker finally feels safe enough to put down the armor, when the scanning stops and the analyzing stops, and they just look at you, you'll see something most people never get to see. A mind that chose rest. And chose you. I'm Thought Paradox. If this video said something you needed to hear, share it with someone who needed it too. See you in the next one.